military personnel and civilians, including 2 Malian generals and a suspected French agent, accusing them of attempting to destabilize the country. Authorities say the attempted takeover began on August 1st, but the situation is now under control. To discuss this further, we have on the line African political expert Kwezi Mngqibisa. Kwezi, always great having these insights from you and having these conversations. How are you?
Good morning, Asanda. I'm well. Very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for making time again for us this morning. What does the latest arrest mean for relations, first of all, between Bamako and Paris, France being Mali's former colonial ruler?
I think that the reality of the situation is that France is not going to let up. The reality of the matter is that the geostrategic importance of the Sahel to France is proven by the efforts to continue to want to play a definitive, if not exclusively arrogant at times, but definitely of economic interest role by France in the affairs of the countries of the Sahel. I think that the fact that there is continued effort at destabilization means that the regime, the administration in Bamako and across the region of the Sahel have not yet, I think, arrested discontent amongst the political elites in their countries. It means that there continues to be fertile ground for countries such as France to continue to try and direct the pace content of administration and governance in those countries. So this is not a particularly positive development, but I think that we should be very careful, Asanda, in exclusively pointing the fingers at France. I think that the time has come now since this coup to actually point the fingers in the palace, in Bamako, in the barracks, meaning the military leadership should be able to answer some tough questions. When will democracy see the light of day?
And on that point, Mali's Security Minister, General Mohamedine, said that the group of military personnel and civilians arrested had support from abroad. So apart from France, then, which other foreign interests could want to intervene in Mali for benefit?
Well, I don't think that when many of us in Africa talk about external influence, we almost always point the finger at a capital, meaning a country, at a government. But the reality of the matter is that the fluid security situation and instability in the Sahel, and of course in countries that are going through perpetual transitions, such as those that have got military leadership, it is a fertile ground of, it makes international, financial and economic interest salivate at the prospect of being able to capture the transition process, to direct the actors in that transition. So in this particular situation was France, because they've got a national that has been identified, and of course we can take at face value for now the statements from the military that there is international interest, meaning almost exclusively pointing to a country being interested in destabilizing the administration. But the reality of the matter is that Bamako or Mali and the broader Sahel has been the playground of military mercenaries that have actually done the bidding for financial interests, that are willing to actually put in money in order to see their men or military cohort being in charge of that country. So I think that it is practical for us to look at the recent history of the financial interest, meaning that it's private sector, as well as combining with economic interest, which is countries wanting to see an end of the experiment that is happening in Bamako.
What is known about those who have been arrested, particularly the the 2 Malian generals and the 1 French agent?
Well, I don't know much about the French agent, and the whole suggestion of him being an agent, Asanda, would mean that very little will be known in normal circumstances. But there is something very notable that we must actually take note of here, Asanda. The 2 generals that have been arrested are not the first group or are not part of the first instance where military people or the military is eating itself up. What many of us missed out on observing in the transition, in this perpetual transition, is the fact that the Minister of Defense, who was the commander of these 2 at some stage, has actually been removed as the Minister of Defense to become now the secretary in the presidency. This has led some observers, keen and acute observers of Mali, to point out to the fact that military junta is not as a coherent unit as we would like it to be, or as the Malians would like it to be in order to effect a transition to democracy. The reality of the matter is that you have got people that are beginning to be a little bit squeamish within the military junta about the tactics that are being used to suppress dissent. There are some who are actually opportunistic. They're not squeamish about the civil liberties being encroached upon or suppressed, but they are actually opportunistic in saying that the choices of the military junta ones that they are disagreeing with. For example, on the choice of military security cooperation arrangements. These are some of the factors that are actually playing themselves out in the public eye, but reflecting of discontent, disagreements, and I think residual fatigue on the part of the military. When I call it fatigue, it is because we still do not know when the elections would be. The promises of the military for taking over, which was to bring back a system of governance that is responsive to the people, has not yet been articulated. And I think until that happens, we are going to continue to see more threats from the military within, more threats from outside using discontent within the military, more threats from outside in the region using broader societal discontent with the military.
How should France respond to these latest news?
I think the relationship between France and the Sahel countries, the particular ones, Guinea, Bamako, as well as Niger, is very tenuous at best, but very much aggressive diplomatically and otherwise. The reality of the matter is that I don't think there is going to be any normalization of relations anytime soon. That's the starting point. But I think, secondly, and perhaps more importantly, we are going to need to see more from the military of Mali, in terms of not only the choices it makes in terms of bilateral defense cooperation. As we have seen, they've gone all out to align and associate and actually pursue relationships with Russia, both with state Russian defense cooperation arrangements as well as private military arrangements. We need to see beyond these defense military arrangements to more of an articulation of a democratization, of a transition, of a timeline, of the return to civilian rule. Until all of those things happen, there's no amount of pronouncement by Bamako, by the military, or for that matter by France, that is actually going to see a stabilization of the situation in Mali and by extension addressing the regional conflict context of the Sahel.
Authorities say the attempted takeover began on August 1st. There were rumors of this attempted coup in the country. That arrests are only being made now. What does that point signal on whether the military rulers are making headway or still struggle with handling such matters?
When I read this and made some contact, I had a smile and at the same time had a chill, Asanda, because what it actually communicates is the intelligence capability of the military junta, in that they could have actually chosen a more aggressive approach, which is a shootout. They could have chosen a situation of making an example out of the military as well as the civilian sympathizers of the coup by electing the coup. You've seen as a reporter, a citizen reporter, you've seen the movie before, whereby in the morning people are allowed to actually take over some aspects of government, the radio station, the airport, and so on, and then there's a fight back in order to inspire confidence in the military junta, in order to fire up the imagination of the population, of the fighting capabilities of those in charge. But the subtleness of it all, it means that there is a very well-oiled intelligence machine that at this point in time can be seen to be loyal to Colonel Goida, who's the president of the country. Now, the extent to which this will remain the case, we do not know. But the fact that they've been monitoring, they've put these individuals under surveillance, and they were able to actually pick them up and connect both in terms of those that are willing to do the hard work of fighting and taking over the country, as well as their sympathizers, it is something that is both worrying, but at the same time, something worthy of continuing to follow up.
Why do you think there is internal rebellion, then it seems, within Mali? You speak of a well-oiled intelligence machine. In terms of who could be behind these coup attempts within the country?
Sandra, many of us are always looking for the boogie, for the person to blame, and it's normal. It's human nature. Who is the puppet master? But what we always overlook is the reality that Mali is still a country that is facing extremism. Today's movie, that is Mali, is actually about a coup. But the reality of the matter is that from 2012 up to this day, we still have not seen both the government or society at large deal decisively with the threat of two extremist groups. So the extremist groups, if our thinking is correct, is driven by local grievances. Now, those local grievances, if not addressed by the military through a democratic, civilianizing, transition, timetable-setting process, they are going to be fertile grounds for local people to actually find an outlet. With the Prime Minister of the country former Prime Minister having been arrested 2 months ago, the reality of the matter is that there is no civilian democratic political space to talk of. What does that mean? It means that no matter how illegitimate, lacking credibility or violent these extremist groups are, they are going to be the only outlet where political expression can be made by the youth of that country, by the elites of that country. So the reality of the matter is that France, financial private sector interests, will find a fertile ground that is willing to take up arms to support anybody who will effect some change, in the hope that any future change will be benefiting of those that have been neglected from either the stability dividend that the military claims to have, or for that matter, a democracy dividend that might accrue at a future date.
Authorities in Mali are now saying, well, after all of this, don't worry, we've got things under control. What would they need to demonstrate to convince us of this statement and make it believable that things are in control now?
Well, I mean, you see, when you're talking to a military person, Sandra, indeed, foiling a coup is actually the height of all military science and quotations we've ever had. Capturing your enemy before there is even hostilities or fatalities is the height of a good, proper military machine. They have done that. But this is not something, this is not what Mali exclusively needs right now. The environment of stability as defined by the military has existed now for a number of years. Yet we have not seen any movement, which means less commitment and investment on the part of the military to actually effect a transition. So we could all be convinced they are powerful, they are capable, they've got the intelligence. That intelligence is driving their military response or interventions. That's good for them as the military, but it is not good for Mali. And what it is that Malians need, which is what we have seen with protests, which is what we have seen in pronouncements by civil society, by opposition leaders, by regional observers, by international community, is this transition to firm up. Let us have a date, let us have a process, let us have the reforms. This is where the military is mute at this point in time. And until they pronounce themselves through a responsive process, none of us should be convinced that there will be any change. We might celebrate the military stability that the military brings to the table, but the table is far larger in need of other factors than just simple.
Are you still there, Kwezi? I heard the line make a sound that it sounds like it's cut off there. We're in conversation with African political expert Kwezi Mngqibisa. I think his line got cut off there. I'm not sure if we'll have time to get back to that story and continue to chat and wrap that up. Talking about a failed coup attempt that's rocked Mali as dozens of soldiers were arrested for allegedly plotting to overthrow the government, and some of those arrested being 2 Malian generals and a suspected French agent. We say in inverted commas that agent because it still remains to be seen in terms of who this French person is exactly, and if they were indeed a spy, and how we would even gather that information, as of course spies operate in very secretive manners and with high intelligence. We'll take a short break and see if we can still get a hold of Kwezi and finish this conversation off. Stay with us. This is Africa Rise and Shine.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.